Hello everyone, my name is Ayla and this is my Milestone O1 showcase. Most of my time spent this week was doing research on how exactly to accomplish what I wanted. I looked into various resource packs that already exist, various game rules that might be helpful, the best hostile mobs to use for my map, and just general mechanics that I can take advantage of, not only for my map itself, but to help me to create it. When I was first thinking of creating this map, I had some really specific mechanics I wanted to do, and I was a bit afraid I was going to have to learn how to program them in myself, which was daunting because I didn't know the first thing about modding Minecraft. Then came along last weekend's Minecraft Live showcase that I decided to check out on a whim, since I've just in general been getting more into the game lately. Lo and behold, one of the mechanics I was most worried about, the use of sound to hurt the player in some way, was right there in the form of the skulk sensor. Technically, I had been introduced earlier than that, but I had somehow missed it. I don't always keep track of all of the announcements and snapshots. I don't always keep track of all the announcements and snapshots and such. I've also learned about a program called Block Bench, which I've started doing some research and playing around with. Essentially, you can make custom mobs really easily using either custom models or they have some preloaded ones of all the mobs already in the game that you can just edit. Back to Minecraft. This is my little testing world. I spent an hour or two testing things like the way skulk sensors interact with redstone, because that's how I'm going to use the sound in the game, and how jumping creates a stronger signal. I also tested the aggro distance of the enemies I want to use. Obviously I have to jump in to creative to do that. They technically still notice me, or I have to jump into survival to do that. They technically still notice me when I'm in creative, but they're not aggressive or anything. I am also using a small resource pack right now for my own sanity that allows me to silence certain mobs using a name tag, because these guys are very loud and very annoying. I'm going to be using this little world throughout the process of creating my map to test mechanics and redstone contraptions and general things that I want to implement. Now, let's hop over to the actual level. First thing I did when I started creating was go and look for a good map. If you notice down here, I'm actually playing on the most recent Minecraft snapshot. And while this is partially for the use of skulk sensors, because that's the only way to get them in game is to use a command to cheat them in, also largely because I adore new terrain generation that's coming out. In previous versions, most of the mountains were closer to hills, in my opinion. You can see how just absolutely massive the mountains are now. But I realized that I could technically build the mountains up onto hills, but that would make it add so many hours to my workload. So I figured I'd work smarter, not harder. There's also the fact that now it actually will group similar biomes together. So you see kind of an ice spikes, kind of a mountain over here. Lots of snow everywhere. There's a little village over here, which I thought was really nice for the fact that one of the options of directions to go with at the end of my level, like the next level, is towards a nearby village. So that was just a nice coincidence of where I decided to start building. But anyway, let me start by setting the time to sunset, because yeah, technically, I mean, it was sunrise and very similar. I do have time moving set to off because I didn't want it to be cycling day and night. I want it to be sunset. I actually might make it just a little bit later for the actual game level, but for now we'll start with this. That also spawned right there. I found it really funny because I'm going to be using pillagers and such, but I am going to be getting rid of that because it doesn't necessarily thematically make sense. As you can see, ignore the beacon. I'll explain it later. But as you can see, I have sort of gray boxed the entire level. I've gray boxed out the general paths I'm going to be making. It's not set in stone. Clearly, you can see it is wool. So I'm definitely going to be editing and refining it as I start actually building. But this is the general shape. The lime green wool is the critical path. It's the easiest and fastest, but not totally without its dangers, and definitely with the most boring loot. But it's the stuff you'll need to move on. The light blue are optional paths that will have some traps, or especially more traps, and additional better loot. The dark green wool down over here is kind of the player start area, and it'll eventually be just kind of a little camp. I need to get rid of a lot of the powdered snow around here. Actually, there was a bunch in the main part that enemies kept walking into and damaging themselves. And then over here, all of these campfires, which I'm not super set on the placement of all of these, but all of these campfires are going to be enemies, with this kind of 4x4 campfire in here is going to be the tent of the boss. The last one, if you're taking the destructive, dangerous path of just plowing your way through the enemy camp, that'll be your last stop. As you can see, or if you'll notice, let me pull it up. The path that I have is very different than my paper map. The general shape of the path itself is fairly similar. It is mirrored, and obviously there are differences, but the general shape is there. I decided to, rather than following exactly this, just kind of play with the natural terrain as much as I could, because I really liked the way this particular mountain range was shaped with that kind of bowl. But also because making a custom, changing the mountain as much as I would need to make this exactly, which is, to be honest, very basic, because I wanted it just to be kind of a rough outline that I could then edit. Changing the mountain completely would take an absurd amount of time, because you would have to essentially tear most of it down just to build it back up. I'd rather tear partially and build a little bit extra onto it, because I am going to make this kind of a full kind of bowl shape. That kind of brings me back to what this beacon is for. This is not going to be a part of the actual level. It is purely here for creation reasons. I'm going to be using it to mine out the terrain I do need to edit over here. So, because using a beacon with haste 2 and an efficiency 5 pickaxe, basically you can, if you're in survival, you can instant mine stone. Like this only took me a minute or two to start mining this part. And it is much, much faster than punching a block in creative, which is saying something, because that's pretty fast. But yeah, that is my level so far. Very rough outlines, but I'm looking forward to starting to do the actual building of it and refining things. Thanks so much.